internet site. It's fantastic. Okay, caller, thank you for waiting.
Hi, Mr. Subject.
Yes.
I'm having problems with social services and the county itself because about 2 months ago, they took my mother out of her own home and put her in a retirement home in Dunkirk. And I've been trying to get a lawyer just to help me in legal ways to see what's her rights and my rights to try to help her to get out of that place. And I've been trying to call like different hotlines, like Call for Action for like Channel 4 and other places, and to see what kind of lawyers I can just help me. And I know your specialty is elder law, and I don't know if you can give me maybe your phone number, and maybe I can call your office if you have anything you can help me with my situation with my mom.
Give them the phone number right off the bat.
Well, my office number is 672-2800, but can I ask you a couple questions? Are you still on?
Yes.
They actually physically removed her?
Yes, and also they also seized all of her assets and her Social Security too, and I've been trying to, I'm in like a financial and emotional distress with them.
Is this a Medicaid, Medicare thing? I mean, when you say seize assets, I assume they are now directing the money.
Well, they took also her guardianship too. This has been a nightmare for me since last year because there was a caseworker who kept coming to our home like 13 times, talking with my mom mostly and with me, and we told her that everything was, perfectly normal. There's a few problems around at home, but we're working on it. And we just told her to, just to leave us, alone in a way. And she's stating that they kept on getting anonymous phone calls for no apparent reason, but to come and to look into it. And my mom wasn't too happy with the caseworkers wanting to just keep on wanting to come in the house and bugging her and me.
Okay, on what basis did they put your mother away?
Yeah, and there should have been some type of court action doing that.
Well, in October, they just came up, two caseworkers came up with a subpoena and just said they're just going to take my mom to court and take guardianship. So they did take us to court in November, and then in the court proceedings, they stated that my brother, he took my mom to the hospital 4 times, and that the judge stated that she had, she was allowed to go home, which she was for a month and a half, before they kicked the door down, her door down, and took her away. And what happened after that is, what happened is during the court case that the 4 times she was in a hospital, that's why they got guardianship for social services.
Well, what was she hospitalized for?
My brother thought she had like a little bit of problems, and she was not wanting to go to the doctors or the hospital for her own self. And my brother's just a hysterical man, I think, in my opinion, because he's bipolar a bit and some other mental problems he has. But he's trying to control with drugs and other psychiatric help. But I think I don't know if he's the one making the phone calls to social services back last year, or
what do you think?
What was he saying though? What was the nature of the phone calls?
I don't know. They don't tell me. It's anonymous. I'm not allowed to even know who made the phone calls. And right now, I don't even know what's going on. How much is the bills are costing me or costing my mom, because they seized all her assets. I don't even know how much it's costing her to be in that home and any other payments. I'm in the total darkness, and I just don't have a lawyer, or I don't have a lawyer for her. And I mean, I'm really frustrated. I'd like to go up to the point I'd like to even sue the county, but I know that sounds a little bit harsh.
It's been done before.
It has, but who had guardianship of her before?
Nobody. She was just herself.
And then she wound up, I'm having trouble connecting the dots here right now. She had 4 calls, there were some anonymous calls. She wound up in the hospital 4 times against her will?
Yes. My brother kind of kidnapped my mother and put her in the hospital, and I was there. And the caseworker who worked at the hospital, I explained to her about what my brother is. In a way, he's a little mental in a way.
So you're saying she went to the emergency room 4 times, or she was admitted 4 times? So there must have been something physically wrong with her.
Well, they looked at her, and there was just a couple of this and that, because she has a little bit of diabetes, but then she's controlling it. And I don't know. They just said she can go home, and I brought her home each 4 times.
And then at some point they got a court order and removed her.
Yeah.
Okay, now who's been appearing in the court proceedings?
Well, there was only one court proceeding. It was back in November, and I was there, and she had her own court-appointed lawyer.
Yeah, I was going to say she'd have a guardian appointed by the court. Who was that person?
Mr. Sullivan.
Mike Sullivan from Fredonia?
Yes.
Have you spoken with him?
Yes, I spoke with him when me and my mom went before the court case and everything else like that, and he got her to not to go to a home at that moment of time. But the trouble was, she, they just a few weeks later they wanted to harass her again in a way, like coming in her house, and she said no. It was the same two caseworkers who gave the subpoena back in October, and a cop or a sheriff.
But there still has to be the guardian on her case, so I would think Mike's still involved.
Mm-hmm.
So you may want to contact him to find out what the status is. This sounds like a case, by the way, and the Chautauqua County Legal Services, I think they have offices both in Jamestown and Dunkirk, but they provide that type of service to protect her interest. Now, the guardian is there representing her in some respects, but he's not actually her lawyer. He's there to determine what's in her best interest, which isn't always necessarily the same thing. That's sounds like a funny thing to say, but they are actually separate functions. If you look under Chautauqua County Legal Services, give them a call. They have very competent counsel. They work very hard for very little money. They're dedicated people. And what you need to do is take to them copies of all the court papers that have been filed, orders that may have been issued, and then, where is your mother? Somewhere locally still?
She's in Dunkirk right now in St. Vincent's.
Okay.
And I've been visiting her.
Yeah, I know where that is. So they'd be able to interview her there. I assume she's mentally competent, or at least to the extent that she can answer questions. How is she doing? How does she feel? Yeah. Why is she there? Things like that, right?
That's what I wanted to do. But the one thing is, you're talking about the Chautauqua County Legal Services. Is this the Southern Tier Legal Services? Is this the same one?
It may be. I'm not sure.
Because we were going to Jamestown to this free lawyer service because we wanted to fight against social services for taking away her money. But they didn't want to give her any help because she's a foreigner, she's a Hungarian, and she doesn't have her green card, and we couldn't find it. That's what we were trying to do at the moment in time when they were kicking down the door. We were looking through her home to try to find the little green card to try to prove that she's a permanent resident, and so she could have got a free lawyer. But the trouble is, we just didn't have the time before they started to take her away, and I couldn't find her card at all because, it's her own property, her own stuff. And I'm totally lost. That's why I was trying to call around local lawyers who maybe could have helped me and just interviewed her, or in a way try to help me in a way. What process do I go just to get her back take her out of that home place? But they just don't want to touch anyone. No one wants to help me, and I feel like the only solution is to go out of state, get a lawyer somewhere else other than New York, and go after the county and get my mom out of that home. I mean, I feel like that's a real big uphill battle, but then I don't know where else to turn or where else to go.
Well, you may be able to go as close as Buffalo. But I'd try legal services again. I didn't know they discriminated against non-citizens because, for example, if there's an immigration issue that needs appointed counsel or assigned counsel, who would represent them if they weren't citizens? They can't be appointed counsel. That doesn't make sense. So check into it a little bit further. Give Mike Sullivan a call and find out what the status is of that. If there's court orders issued, the problem with it is there are very definite time limits as to how and when you can attack existing court orders. Those times may have passed already. Mm-hmm. It's hard to say.
Okay, well, thank you, caller. We have another couple calls. I wanted to let you know that Mike Sullivan, he's ex-mayor, too.
He was the mayor of Fredonia up until about a year ago.
Yeah, and let's hope that we can get this one resolved somehow or the other, and if I can help you in any way, contact me.
And Mike is very competent, by the way. He does a nice job at that, so I presume that he did represent her best interest, and whatever recommendation he made would have been based on a lot of work, a lot of research, and a lot of soul searching. So I would trust what Mike's recommendation ultimately would have been.
Yeah, well, I had Mike on, and I had to cancel him twice. First time, there's another Mike Sullivan at the time, and that was the guy who was PR director for Chautauqua. And so I put a call out to both of them within a month or so, and Mike Sullivan responded from Chautauqua. So I lined him up, And I'm sitting here, and the crew says, Mike Sullivan's here. I said, wait a minute, he's right here next to me. Mike's secretary.
So you had two Mike Sullivans on the show that day.
Mike's secretary had never really confirmed or anything, and said that he'd be on. But so I agreed to have both of them. But Mike Sullivan from Fredonia said, no, I'll come back some other time. So he came back another time, and we got a guy on who was absolutely. He was outraged by some Italian, and he used a number of strange epithets for being on the television, and he died. He just
bleeping them out.
He really did. Well, it was a horrible call, and we couldn't cut it out for some reason, so we had to cancel that program with Mike Sullivan on it.
Oh my!
But he did come on furthermore and did a nice job.
He's a nice fellow.
And he is an excellent attorney.
You do have a couple other calls?
They're working on one now. Let me ask you another question here. How would you some people are afraid or don't want to or hesitant to attack the county social services department, and I know people who've sued them and won, I might add, because of the question of incarceration of sorts. You know, not really putting them in jail legally, but putting them in a nursing home or something legally through court action. And of course, there's so many complications you don't know. Like if they're suffering dementia, which is a good possibility, the county may interact. So anyway, what would
they almost have a duty to, because there are adult protection workers as well as child protection workers.
Right.
If there's a serious issue of whether or not the adult, for whatever reason it is, doesn't have to be dementia, could be some other physical ailment or malady, but whatever it is, if the adult or the child is in some type of particular distress where their health, safety, and welfare is in jeopardy, they have a duty by statute to step in and investigate. And they do have the authority, with, of course, the blessing of a court, which is called a court order, but with the blessing of a court to intervene and, if necessary, take all reasonable and necessary steps to make sure that that adult or that child is removed from the situation which is leading to their dangerous situation and put them into a safer situation. So they have not just the right, I think they have the obligation to do so, and I think we really need that anyway. I mean, there's some people that just can't care for themselves. You must know in your personal situation, in your own personal life, people who are getting to a point where they can't care for themselves, but they have nobody here to care for them. Well, that's what people like Adult Protection can do, is to make sure they remain safe.
And there's a lot of elder abuse going on.
There is.
Most of it's hidden under the sheets, but it's there.
That's correct.
Good morning, caller. Thank you for waiting.
Good morning.
Good morning. It's beautiful, beautiful day.
Sure is.
Great. It's a little nippy, but it's beautiful.
I'm thinking about the 4th of July. We're going to get a heck of a snowstorm.
But people say that, and I keep on saying, you know, that may happen, but we can't kick about the winter we've had this year.
Absolutely not.
No.
Being an older person, this is the mildest winter I have in my memory bank. So maybe I've forgotten a winter somewhere, but this is it.
Global warming. Global warming.
I think that may be part of it.
Yeah, I think so too.
I'm thinking, especially when you look at Hawaii, they had a hail the size of softballs in some places. Plus, then they got a water spout.
We get hail around here two or three times a year. It's nothing new to us.
That's true.
Yeah, but it is to Hawaii. This is only I can't remember what's time in like 40 or 50 years, but I can't remember the exact. It's rare.
Yeah. Well, if this continues, it warms up more. We're going to be raising pineapples right here in Chautauqua County. Hello, Mr. Dole. What's up?
I have a question for your guest. Well, not a question, a comment and question. Lots of times as people get older, they still feel they have their full capacity and have managed to, but their children think that they don't have their full capacity, and their children are always telling them what they have to do and so forth. Is there a way to determine whether the senior still has it or not enough to take care of themselves, or
I'm sorry.
Do whatever the children say kind of rule what happens?
Well, that's a difficult question, not legally as much as it is practically, because children can exert a lot of influence over a single parent, for example. When the husband and wife are both still alive, throughout life they stuck together, and as they continue to stick through life, they stick together. So they can pretty much, I think, argue against a child that wants something or children who want something. When one becomes a widow or a widower, it becomes more difficult, and when the child starts to, or the children